In a world of twisted facts, alternative narratives, corrupted corporations, and hacked feeds, how can we decipher the difference between truth and fiction? It's time to take back the truth. Read Robert Kiyosaki's Fake and learn the signs to recognize fake money, fake teachers, and fake assets. Determine what's real in a world where falsehoods are a weapon. Don't let fake advice destroy your financial future. Visit TheRealKiyosaki.com to read Fake by Robert Kiyosaki. That's TheRealKiyosaki.com.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we're talking about the dream of almost every person who is an employee. They want to start their own business. They want to be a startup. And when I was a kid, that was not the way. Everybody wanted to climb the corporate ladder. So when I became an entrepreneur, was my poor dad says, you know, they called you an entrepreneur. I was in a nylon wallet business. Started it up. So I asked my poor dad, because he's a PhD and all this, I said, what does entrepreneur mean to you? He says, it means you're a crook. That's what it means. But, when I listen to young people today, they all want to be a startup. They're gonna be a Jeff Bezos, who just now went past Bill Gates, the old guy. And I think he passed Bill Gates by 50 billion, and it just keeps accelerating. So anyway, it's, everybody dreams they'll just put a few dollars down and become a billionaire and pass Bezos next. So today we're talking about starting up. And by the way, Kim is on the line also. She may drop off because she has to go to the airport, just flying to Maine. State of Maine. So, Kim, anything you want to say about, because you and I started up, how many years ago now, Rich Dad?
21 years ago.
It's been
an amazing ride. It's a roller coaster.
It's been easy. A piece of cake.
Yeah, a piece of cake. No problems. Nah, easy.
Yeah, we just became multimillionaires, and it was, like easy street.
Yeah, if somebody had said to me, Kim, this is what you're going to go through in the next 20 years, I would have never started. So thank God I didn't know.
Yeah. Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Yes, it is.
And it's one of my big complaints against a lot of these academics who teach entrepreneur classes, because I did some of them when I was in MBA program. These guys have no reality of what they don't know. I mean, it shocks me. Every time I went to my business class and said, how in the world are you teaching me? I know more than you do, So anyway, we have two great guests today. We have Aaron Poole. He's the owner of Gadzooks Enchilada and Soup. And every morning I drive past his new location, and I'm listening to his startup story here, and it's horrifying. and our other and so his website is Gadzooks, GADZOOKSAZ.com. It's enchilada and soup. And I said, that's kind of an interesting idea. And the other guest is JT Marino, and he's a co-founder of Tuft and Needle. And I can't believe some of the numbers he's running here, but he's going to pass Bezos next week. Okay. So anyway, so we're going to talk about the pros and cons of being a startup. So if I could start with Aaron. Aaron's the second time on our program. I remember he had a little store further to the west, I believe, in Phoenix. Yeah. But now you're on the main drag in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Has it been nice and easy?
No.
Tell us what Gadzooks does. How'd you get enchiladas and soup? I mean, it's not a McDonald's burger, is it?
No. So when I came up with the idea, I had my what I call a light bulb moment. About 2005, I was a freshman at Arizona State, and I knew I wanted to do a restaurant, but it was all about, I think, anyone starting their own company. I mean, you gotta identify why should you exist. I think so many people, when they start thinking about doing a startup or being an entrepreneur, they miss that key point, right? How are you different? Where's your differentiation? So I was eating enchiladas up in Lake Tahoe, and my mom made like some chicken enchilada casserole for all the boys that were up there. And a light bulb moment, I was like, enchiladas, that's it. I want to do a fast casual enchilada place. So I researched it while I was in college. That's where college did help me, Arizona State. It forced me to create a business plan,
right,
and start
the discipline of that.
And then I think the number one thing that one of my entrepreneur teachers told me, he's like, just make sure you get working capital. Make sure you get working. I was like, okay. And that just stuck with me forever. And after I graduated in 2009, I got an SBA loan, SBA 7A loan, never working in a restaurant or anything, and a bank was naive enough to take a risk on me.
That is the most gutsy. I mean, I thought I went, I got goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, but I think the key was I just was so naive about what I didn't know that, like Kim was saying earlier, if I knew 7 years ago when I started to think about it, I would have never done it. You know?
Right.
So.
Okay, so we have JT Moreno, and he's co-founder of Tuft & Needle. And JT, could you give us a little idea how you got into the mattress business? Because you're a Silicon Valley engineer, right?
Yeah. It's and even thinking back, it's still weird. It's always going to be weird. going from Silicon Valley software world and jumping into mattresses. I think what spurred it was my co-founder Dehi and I. We're best friends from college, and we were working for a very heavily funded high-tech startup in Palo Alto, and it was the caricature of like startups. And just like you watch Silicon Valley on HBO, I'm watching the show and I'm like reliving and having like flashbacks and PTSD from like what we had to go through. But what we learned from the company we were at was money doesn't solve everything, even when you raise a lot of capital. And really, just like what was just said, starting with why. Why are you doing this startup? What problem is it actually solving? We decided we needed to quit. We needed to do something of our own, but we wanted to build it our way. And having gone through the trenches and with several startups, we actually wanted to do something outside of software. So we spent about 2 weeks doing a retrospective on our lives, looking for a problem that we've personally experienced. We had this long list of things that maybe we could fix. Maybe other people have experienced this kind of a problem. And one of the items was something I put on the list, which was shopping for a mattress. It was just a bizarre experience I went through shopping for my first mattress, unlike any other product or market that I was, would have expected it to be modern and customer experience at the forefront. It seems like I just jumped back into the 80s and it's still being done the same way. Just suffice it to say, it was worse than shopping for a used car. So that was really the route where we just kept going back to this item on the list because it was so weird. It was almost eccentric because it was so old and strange and archaic among some of the other problems and ideas that we had. So what we did was we made a list, and we called it the mattress hate list, and we wrote everything on this piece of paper, everything we hated about shopping for a mattress, everything we hated about a mattress. And then we drew a line down the center. It was just what we would do instead. And then those features and benefits, what we would do instead, we took essentially the least amount that we would have to start with in order to move potentially the industry forward or make a positive change. And we built a website with a photo stock image of a mattress. It was sort of just a test site. And we put a credit card form there, and we just described the company like it would be if we were to actually do this. And we launched that website and took out a Google ad, and then within 15 minutes we made a sale. And then then the excitement ensued, and we were cheering and all of that. And the next moment we quit our jobs. We shut that site down. Basically,
one sale, you quit your jobs.
Then that was when we quit our jobs. We knew if somebody was willing to pay us for something, that we would be on something. Somebody, it wasn't a friend or family member, just somebody online was willing to pay us. We would. That was our test.
But did you have a mattress to sell?
We didn't. No, it was literally just a concept. And that was in June of 2012, and we officially launched Tuft & Needle in October of 2012. TN.com is the site. And what we do is we reverse engineered this mattress site, this whole experience that I went through. We reverse engineered it, figured out how to design and develop, found a manufacturer, And honestly, it's just putting the customer at the center in everything we do, which ended up being a disruption to the industry. It started small, but it snowballed over time.
Where was your first location? Where were you operating out?
We were when we did that test site. We were in Palo Alto, but when we incorporated and started the company, we were in Tempe, Arizona.
Okay.
Now we're downtown here in Phoenix.
So
and JT, most people they're focusing just on the product. So when you launched, was your product perfect?
Oh no, definitely not. I mean, we one of the things I learned from software is you need to get to a minimum viable product and get it out there to see if people want it, and then you need to iterate on it and constantly improve it based on customers' feedback, which is the very thing that doesn't happen in this industry.
So let me ask you this: who built the mattress for you?
Well, I did the designing and the research and design and engineering of the actual product, but I was actually sleeping on site in a small little mom-and-pop manufacturer in Southern California. It was the only manufacturer willing to work with us.
Wow. And you took your company, if I see these numbers correctly, from $1 million to over $100 million in 5 years?
Well, we started with $6,000 because that was all the money we had. We really had to it's $6,000 plus a little bit of savings to hold us over and pay our bills while we were starting up. But when we launched the company, yes, our first year we hit about $1 million, and then this year we're on track to about $300 million.
Oh, congratulations!
Congratulations!
Wow. Thank you.
So, from what I read here, you had the Richard Branson approach. You just saw the margins were too fat, right? I mean, the thing I read about you, the mattress you bought was $3,000, and it probably cost $10 to make. And with that, you could. That was the whole industry was based upon fat margins. Is that correct?
Exactly, and that was one of the first major pains was the margins. It's marked up so much. The brands sell to the stores, and then the stores mark it up, and then they sell it, and then they mark it up an additional amount so that they can discount, and then there's commissions and so on. You have to talk to a salesman. There isn't fast shipping. You have to choose from amongst 30 plus mattresses in a big store rather than just develop me a modern simple mattress and ship it to me in a small box. Give me great service, no commissions, no salesman. Just tell me what the product's about and take care of me. And if I want to return it, make it easy. So that's essentially in a nutshell how we started.
And your positioning statement or your sales approach was mattress stores are greedy?
Yes, that's right. That was an advertising campaign that's done very well, and it's very sharp and polarizing, but it really is. It's hitting the. Yeah.
It's great communication. So before we go on, like I said, it always sounds wonderful. You need to start with $6,000 and suddenly you're a multi-billionaire. And we're going to find out what really goes on in between because that's the fantasy of everybody. So the thing I'm really proud about Aaron Poole with Gadzooks and, enchiladas and soup, he did the insane thing and went into my world, which is the real estate world. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Did you find out it's not as easy to buy a piece of land and put a building on it?
Yeah. Well, our original store in Phoenix was because we got that SBA 7A loan. When we found that piece of property, it was for sale, and it just sucked because I was like, well, I can't afford to buy anything. I literally was living at home with my parents. The only asset I had was, my clothes and a computer. I didn't own anything. I drove my parents' car. I had no assets. I had a savings account of $20,000, so I knew I couldn't purchase anything. Well, luckily, it so happened that because it was an SBA 7A loan, it required basically that I purchased a property because they needed collateral. So they were able to tie it all into this 7A loan, and
so that's your first property you owned.
Yeah.
Was it a dress store?
Yeah, it was originally a gas station, then it was a dress shop, and now it sells enchiladas. Yeah.
Well, the reason I say that, JT, when you talk about old and archaic, try real estate, man.
Yeah.
I tell you, you run into dinosaurs out there in the city planning, the zoning guys. I mean, it is horrifying. I mean, Kim and I, it took us.
We're in the middle of it right now.
All the time.
Yeah.
And we've got the regulations and we got the zoning. And then on top of it, you've got the neighbors. I know you had to deal with your neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've got to approve it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you've done there, Aaron, with your gadzooks is, so this whole world right now is ripe for picking, except the hardest target is the government.
Yeah.
Because those guys are dinosaurs. I mean, Kim and I own properties on Camelback also. But by the way, for those who are listening from all over the world, Camelback is the street. It's like Rodeo Drive or something. And it's the street. It's not as glamorous, but to own on Camelback is something. Kim owned beautiful properties on Camelback. And we also in Hawaii, it took 10 years to get a zoning change. 10 years. So JT, you think the mattress guys are slow? Try the city and federal governments and state governments. So we come back, we've been going more into, see, it's really not the startup. It's really how you keep going, because every one of us, what we find out when we start is how much we don't know. And that's really the question for a startup, is how do you get over what you don't know? So we're going to I'm going to ask Aaron Poole, JT Moreno, and my wife Kim, how do you get through when you don't know everything? We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. We're talking today about the dream of every entrepreneur. They have a startup, they're going to be like Jeff Bezos, and then suddenly it will blow past Bill Gates. I think, I don't know how many, $50 billion last week or something, and accelerating. So you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere. You can listen to it on iTunes or Androids, and all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them for two reasons. Number one, listen to this program again. Listen, repetition is how we learn, and we listen to this again, you'll pick up new nuances and little differences. But most importantly, especially if you're thinking about being a startup, or you're in a startup right now, or you're thinking about quitting your job, this would be a good program for you to listen to with your friends, family, and possible business partners. Before you start this up, or how do you get through the challenges we go through. So again, everybody dreams of having a startup, and I tell you, I have never run into such stupidity in my own life, and that's me. Now, Kim, any comments on being a startup before you run off to Maine with your sister?
Yeah, the startup for me is the most fun part of it of all, because it's the most creative, and as Aaron said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And so you kind of go out there blind, and you're doing what you're doing, and then you run into reality, and you run into the problems, and there it is. So it's a great adventure.
So I want to ask Aaron real quickly, because you talk about so you guys, you have the McDonald's formula. Your business buys the real estate.
Right.
Right. I love that formula. That's Kim and I. The reason we start a business is that we want to buy the real estate. Mm-hmm. And so we have Aaron Poole. He's the owner in the startup of Gadzooks, Enchiladas, and Soup. He's got a second store. I drive past it every day. And JT Moreno, Tuft and Needle, and he's now worth, Jeff Bezos is shaking right now. He's come so fast, starting up with $6,000. So Aaron, tell me about the real estate, because what you told me, I had pain go through my body. Yeah. I had memories of being beaten and lashed by the city, the state, the feds, as well as homeowners.
Yeah. So with our second location on Camelback, as Robert said earlier, it's
It's a nice piece of property right on the main drag.
Yeah, right on the, and especially when you get to the east part of the valley in the Paradise Valley area. I mean, it's a very, very.
Everybody sees you every morning, thousands and thousands.
So with our understanding of like seeing this piece of property, it was just a dirt lot. It's never been developed. The only thing that's ever been on it other than desert was orange trees. And we knew that we might pay a little bit premium on building the site and buying the land, but the goodwill is what you kind of have to. You can't put a number on how much traffic goes through there. So we engaged with the sellers back in 2014, and they were going through a federal litigation trial because they had gone to the city of Phoenix and submitted plans to build an office building on this land.
Sound familiar, Kim?
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
You've been there, Aaron.
And so basically I went down to the federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix and started to learn about the case. And it was over a 15-foot easement off of the canal because one side of this property is along a canal that is licensed. Federal. And it's a federal canal, but SRP, Salt River Project, basically is the operator, the management company behind it. So they were suing the sellers about this 15-foot easement. Well,
and the sellers were the guys you're going to buy it from.
Right. And then luckily for the sellers, their title company stated that on their title that they own that 15 feet. So they were able to, the title company was on the hook for the litigation, the hiring of a lawyer. So this thing went on for a decade. The federal government was just trying to, usually they'll just bleed you out if you're just a sole proprietor. They couldn't do that.
So if you were Gadzooks, you were finished.
I would have been toast, yeah. And then what they were trying to do, because they knew they couldn't do it with money, they tried to do it just with timing.
Yeah, they stall you out.
They stall you
out all
the
time. But then after you did that, you had to go and talk to the condominium guys next door to you, right? That was a real treat, right?
Yeah. On top of that, we had to rezone it. It was zoned to office. We had to rezone it to commercial. And then on the third thing, which was probably the hardest thing I've done in business, is we had to get there's 88 condominiums next to the property. And by code, you have to have 2 ingress-egress points of entry for a property. So we had to get this access agreement from these condominiums. Well, there's 88 owners, and their HOA bylaws state that you had to get 80% of those signatures. So it's about 74, 75 signatures. But on top of that, they had to be notarized. So we had to hire a notary, walk around, knock on doors. We quickly found out that about 75% of the owners don't even live at the condos. They rent them out. So we were sending letters to people in Israel, to people in Australia, New Zealand, all over the world, and just asking them, telling, the story and asking them if they could get this signed and notarized. And
you had like 4 months to
get
get
it done. We had 4 months, yeah. And we started the very first day we did it. We knocked on doors. We got 1 signature. Because what happens is someone, like, you tell them the spiel, you're like a salesman, and they're like, okay, they're hesitant. They'll sign it. Well, we also need to get it notarized. So can you get your ID out, and can you sign here? And that's when people really get cold feet, because they're like, what am I signing up for?
Yeah.
It was insane.
They taught you that in business school, right? How to get through that?
Yeah, no.
So anyway, that's why I like, we've had Aaron on before, and I thought it was about enchiladas. Now it's about real estate. So anyway, JT, what was one of your biggest challenges or tested your soul out there to get?
Well, I'd love to say we launched TN.com and then everything was gravy, but that definitely wasn't the case. When we first made that leap and decided that we were going to start something, we obviously were just wandering and didn't know. When you start something, like you said, there's so much you don't know, and that's where having a problem that you've experienced, it kind of grounds you, and then doing this test, sort of validates it to really take that leap and jump all in. And our approach has always been, we always say burn the boat, so that we quit our jobs and went all in, so that we only had to succeed or we would be on the street. Not maybe that isn't actually what would happen. We'd probably start applying for jobs or something like that. But really, after that test was the real test for us, because we had to go into a market that we knew nothing about. Our background is software and software products and design and that sort of a thing. How do you go into a physical product, a tangible good that's manufactured, And that's where we really hit our first roadblock, was trying to find a manufacturer who was willing to work with us. And this is like an old boys club where if the manufacturers don't know you, they don't want to work with you. And especially if they hear your goal is to disrupt the industry and turn it over. I mean, those are the very, companies they support. So we just started, searching online and finding these old catalogs for who the manufacturers were and calling, and we would just get hung up on. So this was happening over the summer between June and October. And what we just ended up doing was we rented a car and we just drove to the factories. And it was bizarre. They wouldn't sometimes have a main door. You couldn't find it. So you just have to walk in like a truck bay and just walk on the floor of the factory and then ask if they have a salesperson or a representative. And luckily, unlucky, but also lucky, every single manufacturer that we went to, and I would say there's about 20, we drove up and down the East Coast and the West Coast, just going to the address that was listed, turned us down. And it was the last one on the list, which was a small mom and pop. We were almost so defeated that we were like ready to just call it a day and start applying for jobs. That when we walked in and we met the owner was right there, and he was so nice. He sat down. He said, "Okay, tell me what is it you want to do? What are you starting?" And we started describing, like, the customer is in the center of this industry. Like, you just want to build a mattress company and a sleep company that takes care of its customer. He loved it, and he's whatever I can do, let me help you. And so that period of time took about 3 months. And we were so close so many times to just quit because it was so difficult and so old. And if they don't know you, they don't work with you. So luckily we found this small manufacturer. We still work with them today. It's been a great partnership. And I'll tell you, that was they call it the pit of sorrow when you start a company after that first bump, validation. That was definitely a trial for us.
So what,
JT and Aaron, you guys are the prime example of what I think is the number one characteristic of an entrepreneur, and that's resilience and persistence. I mean, so like you said, JT, so many times you wanted to quit, and so many times if you don't have that characteristic of persistence and resilience, of coming back from a setback, if you don't have that, probably the world of entrepreneurship is not for you, because you're going to keep hitting those obstacles and keep hitting those setbacks, and you just got to keep going and get through them.
And the other thing that Kim and I found, the more successful you get, the bigger problems you run into.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's really the big challenge. That's why most people just say small business,
Yeah.
Aaron, one other question, because at the break we were talking about staff and people, because we often say business would be easy if it wasn't for people. Have staff been a problem for you? People been a problem? I know your brother is your partner.
Yeah, I would say for sure the number one issue we probably face is always the people, because I mean with the restaurant we can control our food quality, we can control the cleanliness of the restaurant, we can control the brand, but we can't control how someone shows up to work. And especially with a restaurant, you're going to the type of worker that you're usually hiring. There's a huge demand for that type of worker, and they're not necessarily going to be the most loyal, and you have small margins to begin with at a restaurant, so you can't pay them way over market.
Plus, they don't get tips, do they? A lot of them.
We share tips with them and everything, and everyone thinks that the minimum wage increase was going to, help. Well, it just turns into expectations now, and everyone starts at $10.50 instead of $8.50 when we started, and that was only 5 years ago. So it just, what it ends up doing, it just goes back down to the consumer, right?
Right.
The cost,
right.
So JT, one of your niches is that you're able to take a big mattress and put it in a small box. Is that what you did?
Yep, that's right. Like a giant, we roll it up like a giant Chipotle burrito. And we put it in a box.
Burritos company.
We put it in a box that's about a little bit taller than waist height, and we ship it all over the U.S.
And so somebody doesn't like it, they can ship it right back?
Yep, we have a free 100-night trial. So if you don't like it, what we do is we partnered with donation centers in every city across the U.S., and we actually will schedule a pickup, so those mattresses will will get donated. But luckily we've iterated and gotten the product to a level where we've got the lowest return rate in the industry of 4%. So, but at the same time, we're able to really do good and get back.
So if somebody doesn't like the mattress, you can't resell it.
We take those mattresses and we donate them. In the cases where there's not maybe a donation center around or it doesn't work out, we have it picked up and recycled. But in the industry, there are some companies that do resell, but we don't do that.
Real quickly, Aaron, if you could, somebody's right now sitting at home like you were in your parents' home, ready to start something up, what was the first thing you would say to them? I mean, what's the best advice you could give them?
I think what I dealt with was I needed someone. So you're gonna face a lot of challenges, and I had a lot of people telling me that it was a stupid idea, that I couldn't do it because I didn't have enough experience, that I needed to go get a job, be a dishwasher in a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. But me being an entrepreneur, I felt like I wanted to make the decision.
But you didn't even know how to cook when you started.
I was cooking in my parents' house, but I was figuring stuff out, and I had so many people just on and on and on, where you're breaking down in tears. You want to quit. And for me, I was lucky that I just had one person, one support system, and that was my mom at the time. Luckily, she was my roommate. And she was the one that, like, when she would see me down, she encouraged me, and she said, "No, Aaron, you're going to do this."
That's great.
And I think that for me at that state, because I was at like rock bottom in the sense of my self-esteem. I'm living at home with my parents. I'm 22 years old. I have no money. I don't have a job, on and on and on. And so I think that was so important. Someone that you respect, that's there
keep
to
going. Right, right,
keep you
right. So JT, what advice would you have somebody about a startup?
I would say, think about a problem with a product, a service, or an experience that you've had that you really start with. And you're starting from there because, if you've had this problem, there may be other people out there who do too. And test it as fast as you can. We built a site, and it was a photo stock image of a mattress. I mean, we knew that if we were going to take the leap, so we're risk takers, but we mitigate the risk. So we take this little test to validate that it's going to work. And then once you figured out how to test it, you can get somebody that's not family or friend to pay you money for that product or service, or that there's interest. And I would say, jump in and burn the boats, because that's our approach. There's no way to go except for forward, and you have to persist.
You can't stay halfway on the dock and halfway in the boat. So, Kim, what advice would you have for people who want to dreaming of starting up?
Yeah, well, I love what Aaron and JT are saying. They're right on. And for me, there's three questions I ask. And number one, of course, you've got to be resilient. You've got to be persistent, because you're going to face all these problems that Aaron and JT have been talking about. But my three questions are, just as JT said, number one is, what problem are you solving? Because the purpose of an entrepreneur for me is to solve problems. Number two is, how are people going to hear about you? And number three is, how are you going to grow that business? And both Aaron and JT are great examples of all of that. They're doing it. They're growing their businesses. They're expanding, and they're doing it in really, really creative ways that are solving problems. So I love the examples that they're setting for people.
Yeah, and I want to thank both Aaron and JT for sharing their wisdom here, their success as really young guys, and appreciate your being real about it. So once again, it's Aaron Poole. He's owner of Gadzooks Enchiladas and Soup. His website is GADZOOKSAZ.com, and JT Moreno, TuftonNeedle.com. So thank you all, and Kim, have a great trip to Maine.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And we come back, we're going to the most popular part of our program, which is Ask Robert.
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
It pays to listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android. And all of our programs are archived. You go to richdadradio.com. We archive them for two reasons. Number one, listen to this program again. You'll learn even more because repetition is how we learn. And number two is that if you have friends, family, business partners, or potential business partners, or you're thinking about starting up a business, you got to talk to your husband or your wife, this would be a great program to listen to and discuss, because everybody dreams of, starting a business and becoming Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. But that's not reality. They say out of every 10 businesses, 9 fail in the first 5 years. The attrition rate is extremely high. So that's why the startup, the successful guys make it look easy, but in reality it's not. So I want to thank my sweetheart Kim. She's on her way to Maine to have a party with her sisters. Aaron Poole, owner of Gadzooks Enchiladas and Soup. Like I said, I drive past his shop every day, and I don't know how he got that building on such a small little piece of land. Also, J.T. Moreno, he's a co-founder of Tuft & Needle, and his numbers are through the roof, started with $6,000. So it all sounds easy, it all sounds wonderful. But I don't know if you picked up on this, but all of us have our different lessons to learn. I mean, what Aaron's learning is different than what JT had to learn. And so that's why being an entrepreneur or a startup, you better be a pretty quick learner and have a low ego. So once again, you can submit your questions now to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. So Melissa, what's the first question for Ask Robert?
Our first question today comes from Tiffany in Arkansas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She says, Robert, in starting at my first business, I'm struggling with delegating the day-to-day responsibilities to my staff. I know I have good people around me, but I'm struggling with letting go and just letting them do their jobs. What's your advice on this?
Well, the first thing I would do is I'd read the book, The Cashflow Quadrant, because it's about the 4 different people that are involved in the business world. E stands for employee, S stands for self-employed, small business, fewer than 500 employees. B stands for big business, 500 employees or more. And I stands for professional investor. And very few people are professional investors. Most people are passive. They turn their money over to a financial planner or somebody. So the question on delegation is a tough one, because why people don't delegate is fear. When you get down to it, it's fear. And, the only way you're going to learn is get past that fear. Let it go, trust it, and see what happens. I remember the first time I was working at Xerox years and years ago. I worked at Xerox to get sales experience, and I left, and I'm going to start the nylon and Velcro surfer wallet business. And the receptionist smiled at me. She says, "You're going to fail and you'll be back." And I said, "I'm going to fail, but I'm never coming back." And I think in there is the key to it is you will fail. Everything you do, you will fail at because you don't know how to do it. So that's why I'm saying you've really got to be open to the idea that you will make mistakes, and then, find somebody that can, like Aaron talked about his mom, comfort him. I would never have made it through without Kim. So there's a partnership at a different level in an entrepreneur. If you're just depending upon an employee, let's say, that's not quite the same level as being the owner of a business, because your responsibilities are much higher. So I would find somebody you can talk to, like a coach or a counselor or somebody that guides you through the process, because you will fail. You will make mistakes. Unlike in school, which I really have a problem with all these school teachers. When I was the MBA program, my teachers never made any mistakes. Now, that's not real life. So I'm just saying be prepared to fail, but have somebody you can talk to, a mentor, somebody to get you through the low points and high points. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Joshua in Cleveland, Ohio. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. How do you and Kim overcome setbacks and disappointments in your business life? Sometimes I feel like giving up, and some days it's tough to continue to press forward.
Well, it's really the same thing. It is a matter of personal character. The biggest mistake is that we send kids to school. The biggest mistakes they teach you in school is don't make mistakes. Then they tell you don't cooperate because cooperating is cheating. And then they tell you there's only one right answer. It's one the teacher gives you. How stupid is that? Why would you listen to a person who's never made a mistake and who's been a robot trained to give you one answer? The key to success is how many right answers can you come up with? Test them, test them, test them, test them. That's what J.T. Marino says. He didn't have a product. He just floated it, tested it, see if it worked. Shut it down if it doesn't work. I used to do it all the time. I used to test these products. It wasn't as fast as it is today. But I would take out a small ad someplace and test it. What was the response to my ad? And that is the biggest mistake of school teachers. I wouldn't listen to them. Look, if anybody tells you there's only one way to do something, you're talking to the village idiot there. If there's only one right answer, there's no financial education. All these things is why I don't think you should go to school anymore, because they're out of touch. They're out of touch. So that's why I plug in my new book. It's called Fake Money, Fake Teachers, and Fake Assets. Our school system is one of the most criminal operations there is right now because they're actually keeping people stupid. They're actually keeping people poor, keeping them retarded. That's the biggest problem. Look, you have to make mistakes. There's more than one right answer. There's no financial education. Like I love Aaron Poole. He's buying real estate. I just followed the McDonald's formula. He's following the McDonald's formula. What is McDonald's business? Real estate, not hamburgers. Aaron Poole, it's not enchiladas. It's real estate. But you have to find your formula. And then for J.T. Marino, co-founder of Tuft and Needle, test. You got to make mistakes. You're looking for there's so many right answers out there. There's more than one, and you have to cooperate. In school, cooperation is called cheating. What a ridiculous thing that is. It is so ridiculous. They're so out of touch. So once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, and plug in my new book called Fake. Stay tuned for it. You can submit your questions to AskRobert at RichDadRadio.com. I want to thank Aaron Poole, owner of Gadzooks, J.T. Marino, co-founder of Tuft and Needle, and also my sweetheart Kim, who's on her way to Maine. Thank you for listening to The Rich Dad Show.
What